All right, let's talk about something that's absolutely central to being human, but that we rarely look at from a purely mechanical point of view. Today, we're breaking down the science behind the human sexual response. And you'll see it's this incredible biological process that's both super complex and, honestly, beautifully designed.
So, what is really going on in our bodies during those moments? I mean, it can feel so mysterious, almost like magic. But underneath all that feeling is a very precise, very predictable sequence of biological events. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and really look at the machinery at work. We're going to turn that mystery into a marvel of human physiology.
You know, we really wouldn't understand any of this if it weren't for the totally groundbreaking work of William Masters and Virginia Johnson. Back in the 1950s and 60s, they did something that was, frankly, revolutionary. They brought the study of sex right into the laboratory. They were the first to apply the scientific method to use direct observation to actually map out what the body goes through.
And the biggest thing that came out of all their research was this clear, simple framework. They called it the sexual response cycle, and it breaks the whole experience down into 4 distinct phases. The best way to think of it is like a map, one that guides us through the entire physiological journey from that very first spark of arousal all the way to the end.
So here they are, the 4 stages. You've got excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. Now, this basic sequence happens in both men and women, but, and this is a big but, how long each stage lasts and what it feels like can be wildly different from person to person. But for now, this is our foundational map.
Okay, so the journey kicks off with excitement. This can start from anything, right? A thought, a fantasy, a physical touch. Your nervous system immediately kicks into gear. Your heart rate goes up, blood pressure rises. But the key event here is something called vasocongestion, which is just a fancy word for a whole lot of blood rushing to the genitals. This is what causes an erection in men, and in women, it leads to swelling and lubrication.
From there, we move into the plateau phase. Now, the name is a little misleading because it's not like things level off. It's actually a major ramp-up. Everything that started in the excitement phase just gets more and more intense. Breathing gets faster, muscles get tighter, your body is building and building towards its peak. It's like the final, steep climb right before you reach the summit.
And that summit, that's the orgasm. It's by far the shortest phase, but it's definitely the most intense. All that tension that's been building up is suddenly released in just a matter of seconds. It happens through this series of involuntary rhythmic muscle contractions down in the pelvic region. And that's what creates that incredible, euphoric feeling of climax.
And finally, we have resolution. This is where the body starts to return to its normal pre-arousal state. Heart rate slows down, blood pressure drops, everything chills out. Now, a really key part of this phase, especially for men, is the refractory period. This is a window of time where the cycle just can't start up again, no matter what. It can last for a few minutes or a lot longer. And that's a big reason why multiple orgasms are so much more common in women.
So now that we've got the map of the 4 stages, let's zoom in on a really critical piece of the machinery, the actual mechanics of an erection. We're going to go from the what, the stages, to the how. And honestly, it's a brilliant little piece of biological hydraulic engineering.
To get how the hydraulics work, we got to know the key players. First, you have the corpora cavernosa. Think of these as 2 parallel cylinders of spongy tissue, and they're the main engines that create rigidity. These are wrapped up in a tough, fibrous sleeve called the tunica albuginea. And feeding blood into all of this are the helicine arteries. When the system is off, these arteries are cinched tight. When it's on, they open wide up.
So what's the magic signal that flips the on switch? Well, it all comes down to one single tiny molecule, nitric oxide. You might see it as NO. This little neurotransmitter is the key that unlocks the whole process. When the brain sends the signal, nerves release nitric oxide, and that's the chemical messenger that kicks off the whole chain reaction. In fact, this is the exact pathway that drugs like Viagra are designed to work on.
Okay, so let's put it all together. In the normal flaccid state, the smooth muscles are contracted, which pinches the arteries and keeps blood flow low. But when nitric oxide shows up on the scene, it tells those smooth muscles to just relax. The arteries open up and blood flow skyrockets, increasing by 20 to 40 times. This flood of blood pours into that spongy corpora cavernosa, making it swell up. As it expands, it presses the veins used for drainage flat against that tough outer sheath, trapping the blood inside. And that's it. That's the mechanism that creates and maintains rigidity.
So we've got the local mechanics down, but where did the signals even come from in the first place? Well, this whole thing is being directed by a very sophisticated command center, the nervous system.
There's this constant conversation going on between the brain and the body.
And it turns out there are actually two main highways to get things started. First, you have a psychogenic erection, which is triggered by the mind, by thoughts, sights, fantasies. Those signals travel from the brain down a path to the upper middle part of the spinal cord. But then there's a reflexogenic erection. This one is triggered by direct physical touch. That signal takes a much shorter route to the very base of the spine, and it can trigger a response automatically, kind of like a knee-jerk reflex.
So this whole intricate system of nerves, blood vessels, and chemical signals, it works flawlessly most of the time. But because it's so complex, it also means there are a lot of places where it can be disrupted. And when we understand the physiology, we can see exactly where and why things sometimes go wrong.
And it goes wrong way more often than you might think. Just in the United States, something like 30 million men are affected by erectile dysfunction. And it's so important to understand that this isn't just a psychological thing. Very, very often, it is a direct sign of an underlying physiological problem, a breakdown somewhere in that cycle we've just been talking about.
And this is where sexual function becomes this really powerful window into a person's overall health. For instance, atherosclerosis, or hardened arteries, can physically stop that massive rush of blood from getting where it needs to go. Diabetes can damage the nerves that carry the go signals, and it can even cause something called a venous leak, where the blood can't be trapped properly. And even something like performance anxiety has a direct physical effect. It floods the system with norepinephrine, a chemical that basically tells the smooth muscles to stay tight, which completely overrides the relax signal from nitric oxide.
When you really step back and look at it, the human sexual response is this incredible neurovascular symphony. It's a perfectly coordinated dance of chemical signals, relaxing muscles, and hydraulic pressure. It just shines a light on how much amazing, intricate biology is happening inside of us all the time without us even thinking about it. And it really makes you wonder, what other biological wonders are we just taking for granted every single day?